Hey.
Now, hi Fiona, how are you? Can
Hi, Eileen.
you hear me okay and everything?
Yeah, already, yeah.
We're up and running. Great. Okay, super. Well, hi everybody as well that's tuning in. We're delighted to have you here this evening virtually. We're getting used to this way of being with each other at the moment. Elaine O'Sullivan is my name. I'm the clinical manager in Jigsaw Kerry. So I'm looking forward to this evening, hoping just to share some ideas with you. So I'll hand over to Fiona just to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Fiona Fitzgerald. I'm the clinical manager in Blanchardstown, Dublin 15. So thank you to everyone who's joining us today virtually on today's webinar, which is supporting your own mental health while social distancing. So we may begin. So I just ask that we maybe move on to the next slide, Elaine.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Your little assistant over here. I'll do my best.
Yeah. So it's this is a great way of working. So I suppose just to begin, I suppose the presentation with the question of how do we cope? So how do we cope with COVID-19? It is most certainly a new and challenging event in all of our lives. I think everyone's lives and daily routines have been impacted in some way by COVID-19. And in particular, I guess in terms of COVID-19 and trying to disrupt it and its spread in the community, it has involved us distancing from people physically, and that has brought about some challenges for all of us. It has meant that we've had plans cancelled, events no longer happening, whether they be the big events of a wedding or the smaller events of birthdays and gatherings that we may have had planned with family members and so forth. So there has been a lot of flux, a lot of change, a lot of uncertainty. And in the midst of uncertainty, we can experience emotions of anxiety, worry, stress. And I guess if you are experiencing those things, that is normal. And to quote Viktor Frankl from A Man's Search for Meaning, an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is actually a normal behavior. So people can have a wide range of reactions and responses during and after an event like this. But again, we've never gone through anything like this, but I suppose an extraordinary situation or event. Sometimes what we can do when we are going through something like this is we can maybe misinterpret it, misinterpret our responses to the situation. We might say that there's something wrong with us. Why am I feeling this way? I shouldn't feel this way. Everyone else seems to be getting on with it. Why am I so distressed and upset and anxious and worried? In fact, all of these emotions and reactions are normal, and they are common human reactions to abnormal events. And because all of us have maybe found that our lives changed, it felt like almost overnight. And it seems as though there will be I suppose, an adaptation to all of this insofar as our physical distancing and how we continue to maybe disrupt the spread of the virus within the community. It may extend into kind of a few weeks and a month, and we might be still feeling anxious, tense, stressed. We might be feeling easily irritated towards people at home, people that we're living with, because we're spending more time with them. We might have trouble sleeping, feeling helpless, or even feeling a sort of lack of control, like this all being kind of out of our control, and what can we do about it? We can also, because of the type of situation that we're in as well, because of it being a medical and physical thing that's happening insofar as it being a pandemic, we might be noticing maybe that our physical self, we might be checking in more on that and being very maybe conscious or aware, and maybe pushing physical aches and pains down to being maybe a symptom of it, or a fever if we're having it is that COVID. So we might have very focused kind of thoughts on COVID right now, and sometimes that can lend itself to further anxiety and further worry about ourselves, but also we might be checking in with loved ones and the people we care about as well. I think it's important to recognise that I suppose it is flux. It's all up in the air. So our emotions at times, they might feel up in the air. We might have days where we feel content, we feel calm, we feel hopeful, we feel positive towards the future. And then there might be other days where we feel less accepting, less hopeful, overwhelmed, stressed, panicked. And that's the course of this. And I guess to recognise that these emotions, these intense emotions, can come and go. So every emotion changes and every emotion passes, even the good ones. So it's important maybe when we are in the midst of it, just to hold on to that, that emotions will come and go, and this too will pass. So I'll allow for maybe Elaine to move us on to maybe the things that maybe get in the way of us maybe taking care of ourselves.
Great. Thanks, Fiona, for that introduction. So we thought we might open with just a little bit of a question and invitation maybe for parents to just take stock a little bit. I suppose, we're parents are often really good. We know they are at looking after other people, but in terms of looking after ourselves, I suppose we thought it would be a good thing just to keep in mind, maybe as we go through the presentation this evening, what comes in the way of you taking good care of yourself as a parent. I suppose we'd love to get a sense of that. So you'll have seen in the intro video about how you can ask questions, but you can also put in comments there. So if it's something, if you'd like to contribute at some point, throughout, we'll invite at different times, or just we have our technical support in the background, so they'll get your comments through to us. Again, it might be just something to keep in mind. I suppose for some of us, we might know very clearly what comes in the way of us taking good care of ourselves, and for others, it might need more thinking or reflection. I suppose it's really a personal thing. It might be our personality, it might be how we saw our parents looking after themselves, and then there's all the practical barriers and stuff, which again we're all kind of juggling at the moment. So just an invitation for you as we're talking through it this evening, just to think about it. At the end of our presentation, we're going to be looking at the 5 a day for mental health. So there'll be just some ideas about things that we can do to look after ourselves. But sometimes in order to really be able to engage with some of that, we need to think, okay, well, what stops me in the first place? So I suppose the other thing that's on the side is just a quote from John Shary about, just children needing cared for parents just as much as they need parents to care for them. And I think it's just a good reminder. I don't know if people have read some of John Shary's work. He's behind some of the Parenting Plus stuff, and he's really accessible. He's just a really good author in terms of all things parenting. So just as a bit of an opener, I suppose that's where we're coming from this evening. And just to say, I suppose we're not the experts here. Just to reiterate, what is best for you and your family. So everyone is going through this very strange time, and we're all doing our best. And there might be something that you take from this evening, you take from this conversation that could be helpful, but we're just hoping to share ideas. So it's not about sitting here saying, oh, you should be doing this and this and this. We don't really want it to feel like that at all. But just, I suppose, we know a little bit about mental health, so we just want to share some of that information. So I'm just going to try and move on my slideshow now. So here are my two little busybodies. I suppose they are looking at kind of the competing demands of parenting, and then the added complication, I suppose, of COVID-19. So when I was thinking about this evening and thinking about, okay, you know, the COVID-19 situation, the lockdown. You know, I was talking to my colleagues about it in Jigsaw Kerry, and I had a discussion with one of my colleagues, Grania, and she was reminded, and it really resonated with me, about I suppose this new normality, and how it's brought a lot of change for the families. We're going through a transition, I guess, a new way of being together like never before. And she was reminded of the theory behind stages of teams or groups, and how this process might mirror maybe some of what has been happening in households throughout the country. So this guy called Bruce Tuckman, and he has all these different stages. So, you know, forming is like the first stage that he talks about, and we were thinking about that initial, you know, getting the news, I suppose, and, you know, when maybe your workplace closed down or when schools were closed, that initial kind of stage, forming stage, where it's the uniqueness of the restrictions, kind of people may have gotten okay, but the sudden change might have brought on some anxiety. And then, you know, we kind of, I suppose, things kind of settled, and we realized, okay, it was going to be like this for a while. And I think people entered into a different phase, maybe storming. So again, people pushing against boundaries. There might be some conflict, different personalities, thinking about the different ways people work. So a household where maybe a parent is working from home and there are students studying for the Leaving Cert, or there's younger children. And just, I guess, you know, the kind of conflicts that might come with that. And then norming and performing are kind of the final two stages, where you're kind of getting into a little bit of a rhythm, and things are being worked out. Some of those initial problems maybe are being ironed out. And then I guess people move towards maybe being able to achieve their family's goals, whatever they might be for you. So we were just kind of reminded about that, and it doesn't mean that it's going to be smooth sailing. I think we've all experienced that. It's kind of like peaks and troughs, where you'll have good days and bad days. But yeah, so just to kind of, I suppose that kind of resonated with me, is what I'd shared. But I suppose it's just really important maybe to take stock of what has happened. Like Fiona was saying earlier, it's just kind of the situation that we find ourselves in. And sometimes we need to allow ourselves to go through all those emotions before, and then we'll be in a better place, I guess, to kind of move forward, to kind of be at our best, and to use the resources, you know, within the resources, I guess, in the circumstances that we all have. And I suppose something which has been really important for me is just taking it one step at a time. Whatever the day might bring, just think, okay, you know, we'll just, you know, try and be gentle. I suppose there may be things that you're doing right now that you might not ordinarily, you know, in a way to try and get yourself and your family through the situation, whether it's young people having more screen time, or there being extra treats, or whatever it is. And that's more than okay. You know, it's not to say that these routines or practices are going to continue for all time, but I suppose in terms of getting you and your family through this unprecedented time, you know, I really think that you need to suspend judgment on that, I suppose. And also, I guess, anecdotally, what we've been hearing from families is there is some good stuff coming out too, like maybe some positive stuff that has emerged for you and your family, that you might hold on to, you know, new routines or new things that you've come to learn and know about each other. So yeah, so there may be some silver lining there. And yeah, so I suppose the other thing just to say is that acknowledging some of those emotions might help, because sometimes when we're sad or scared, it can kind of come out as anger. So that can be another reason maybe why it's important just to acknowledge what we're going through. And I suppose just in terms of, I was struck as well just about all the roles that we hold in terms of being a parent and everything that is involved in that. And you know, this has only probably been exacerbated by the COVID crisis, with many of us also juggling working from home and being a parent at home, maybe supporting homework, keeping everyone fed, maybe supporting older relatives. And we know that, you know, I suppose some of the stuff that parents tell us that they do all the time is fixing problems, you know, maybe it's crowd control, or maybe it's conflict resolution at the moment between teenagers, but hair disasters as well. Jigsaw are doing the Bad Hair May challenge at the moment, but there's a lot of COVID-19 haircuts out there. So yeah, often that can fall to parents maybe to fix some of those. And then I suppose we, you know, we have to be there for young people, accept them, challenge them to do their best, set boundaries. There's a lot in it. And then also, of course, you know, we're a parent, but we're also potentially a partner or a sibling or a colleague or a friend. So being a parent is one really big part of our lives, but it's not the only part either. And I suppose my world research tells us that all of this stuff, all of that stuff, fixing hair problems, like all of those bits are really important for the young people that we support in our lives. You know, being a one good adult means doing all of that stuff, and that's so important for building young people's resilience. But I suppose it doesn't mean that it doesn't leave us feeling a little bit burned out. So I suppose we thought it might just be good to kind of flag this again before looking at the 5-a-day. Like all of these competing demands can leave us feeling burnt out, and there has been some research done now on parental burnout. Isabel Roskam, she describes parental burnout as feelings of being overextended and depleted of one's emotional and physical resources. And again, in preparation for this evening, I was thinking about in recent years there is increased pressure on parents, you know, to bring up talented, well-mannered, well-rounded little human beings. And we're constantly being bombarded in social media and in advertising by images of perfect parenting, and it really just serves to put pressure on ourselves to try and do more, and leaves us really kind of feeling inadequate, I suppose. But some of the things that might, you know, just up here we might notice just in terms of feeling a bit burned out might be that feeling to feel exhausted, maybe feel like you're dragging yourself through the day, not getting enjoyment out of some of the things that you might have previously, and feeling a bit more irritable. And like, of course, all of these things are happening for us to varying degrees at the moment, but if it's something that you feel is just, you can't shake, or it's been ongoing for a little bit of time, then maybe it's something worth thinking about and worth looking at in terms of your own routine and how you're looking after yourself. And of course, there are ways sometimes with all of this going on, you know, that we might try and do. We'll all know ourselves, it's all a really personal thing, but like there might be stuff, and there is stuff, of course, that we all do in order to try and cope, which is unhelpful to us and likely those around us. So again, we just thought it would be worth mentioning by way of, I suppose, again, just an invitation for you to consider in terms of your own life and how things are going for you at the moment. Like, again, I suppose we're not sitting here in judgment or anything like that. You know, everybody is doing their best. And again, you know, it's just an opportunity, an invitation for you. I suppose if you did notice that there were things like, you know, maybe you were cutting yourself off from people that are generally supportive, so you haven't returned your call to your sister, or maybe you're just blaming yourself, or ignoring even some of the public health advice, or not adhering to some of that stuff, which is so important, like Fiona was saying, in terms of slowing the spread, becoming angry or relying on alcohol or substances. So all of those things, you know, like there are probably different ways to go about it. So again, just an invitation for you to have a think about that. And before I hand over to Fiona again, this was the final thing that we were thinking about, might just be worth mentioning, hoping that it's not feeling like too much, I suppose, but just the importance of how we think. This is something that will be really familiar with talking about with the young people that come to Jigsaw for support, in terms of their thoughts and how important their thoughts are. So our thoughts impact our mood and our behaviour, and if you find that sometimes your thought process maybe can be negative or worse, critical of yourself and your efforts, then it might be worth just noticing that and trying to maybe think or work on an alternative. So even when you catch that happening, maybe to ask yourself, is this fact or opinion? You know, what would I say to a good friend if they had this thought? So I think that's always a good one, because we often be really there for our friends and care for them, but sometimes we don't care for ourselves. And then just is there another way to think about this? And it's just about trying to be compassionate with yourself during this time. And then I suppose just thinking about a lot at the moment, like Fiona was saying at the start, is kind of outside of our control. So thinking about things that are outside of our control, it's a human condition, but it is frustrating. So maybe, again, just taking it one step at a time, it can be helpful to think that this won't be forever, and think maybe, okay, well, for now, this is how it is. I can't change that, but what are the things that are within my control? And then also just thinking about, finally, children or young people and their thoughts. Again, really powerful. So how they're thinking can really impact kind of how they're feeling, and how they're doing in general. So I suppose children just look to us a lot, you know, it's kind of like, I suppose, testing the waters in terms of how they should be feeling. So that's just maybe an important note. Maybe to just be a little bit aware, kind of like, it's okay for them to see that you're worried, but for them to see how you're dealing with it, or that you're talking about it, or acknowledging that, that can obviously be really powerful. But maybe it is worth tempering that. So those most serious or worrisome conversations shouldn't probably happen. Maybe if there's little listening ears, and if your child does seem upset or worried, just encourage them to talk. It's that old adage, I suppose, you know, problem shared and all that. And maybe help them to understand it's okay for them to be experiencing a range of emotions, and you are as well. And I suppose it's just important for them to feel heard, and for their views to be kind of acknowledged and all that. And you'd be surprised just the power of that. So Fiona's going to take us through the 5-a-day now. So I'm going to click on here, and hopefully our technology will continue to work. Yep. Okay, Fiona.
Thank you. So just, I suppose, Jigsaw's 5-a-day for mental health was actually something that's come from a research piece that was done a couple of years ago by the UK government, and examined and researched all things related to mental health and supports that help us to maintain and sustain a sense of well-being and mental well-being. And that project was actually called the Foresight Report. And from that, in the same way that there is a recommendation for having a set number of fruit and veg a day, or carbohydrates, or you're meant to have a little and few of treats or whatnot throughout the day, there's a recommendation for, I suppose, individual action, suggestions for individual action that are based on 5 things. It's that idea of giving, of learning, of connecting, of taking notice, and being active. So those being the 5 a day for mental health. And in that research, it found that individuals that did that and who were able to sustain that actually had a more nourished mental health. I suppose they were looking after themselves, and that was really supportive to their overall well-being. Insofar as, I suppose, the first one that I'll introduce to yourself today is giving. So giving is seeing yourself and your happiness as something that's linked to the wider community, and that can be incredibly rewarding, and it can create connections with the people around us. So that can be that, I suppose it's that idea of looking out as well as in. So it might be doing something nice for a friend or a stranger, thanking someone, smiling. In the midst of what's happening now with COVID-19, we're actually seeing a lot of giving, a lot of acts of people doing things for charities, fundraising, doing things that maybe that are challenging them, that maybe are giving them a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, and it's that giving back. So there's this concept of when we're doing something for another person, they benefit, but actually we benefit also. There's like this, there's a secondary gain, or there's a positive outcome for us also, just in terms of our own mental health and satisfaction. So right now it's about maybe looking at maybe the opportunity in COVID-19 and how we support our community. Are there things that you or I can do to make things easier for people that we connect with and who live amongst us in our neighbourhood and in our community? So you'll hear a lot now maybe around GAA groups doing particular things for the elderly and the vulnerable within the community. You'll also hear of people donating food to food banks to help support families that maybe need that level of support. So there's things that we can do discreetly, or there's things that we can do maybe in our fundraising online, and we share it on our social media, and that builds up a bit of an excitement, and we get a bit of money, and that goes towards something that maybe is helping that COVID response, or maybe helping services like ourselves continue to do the work that we do. So giving is something that's really really good for our overall sense of well-being and satisfaction. Connecting then is something that's hugely important right now. I think it's something we're hearing a lot about, just to stay connected, even though we're socially and I suppose I prefer to say physically distancing. I think we can stay connected socially, even though we're a little bit restricted at the moment, just in terms of how often or who we are even interacting with at the moment. But it's about maybe connecting with the people that are around us, with friends and family, colleagues, neighbours, and using creative ways of remaining connected and staying part of people's lives. So a lot of people are using technology at the moment, video calls, texts, emails. I've had letters, I've received letters from people, which has been quite nice. It's not usual that we'd receive a letter or a card. So it's that idea of being held in someone's thought, and I suppose that idea of those connections being the cornerstones of our lives, and when we invest in those connections, they actually help to support and enrich us. Right now as well, because of the things that I mentioned at the beginning, us maybe feeling anxiety, stress, and overwhelmed from time to time, it's important to consider using, I suppose, those connections to talk and get support, asking for help where we need it. Again, it might be that we have people in our life who we trust and who maybe have sight of what's going on for us and maybe how difficult things are. So sharing with those people who we trust, as well as connecting with people, which I think is fantastic, and we're doing so in many different ways. It's also important to recognise that we are connecting in a very different way. I know I have found in particular my connections in this new way of working can at times be quite tiring or demanding. So we're online and we're virtually present. So it's a different kind of energy. So when you are maybe choosing to connect with people in that way, I suppose it's about maybe considering whether you have the time and space. So whether you have the head space for it, if you're after working from home for a series of calls in that day. Is it about maybe staggering when you make those calls, or using those calls maybe to bring a rhythm or routine to your day? Maybe it's about scheduling a call with your mum for first thing in the morning, or your sister or brother, because then that creates a sense of connection first thing in the morning and gets you off to kind of a routine in some way, setting you up for the day. And going into those, I suppose, opportunities for connection virtually, it's important as well to consider your own time as well. So how you're carving out time for yourself, so that when you are going onto those Zoom calls, or you are going onto WhatsApp Messenger or to group chats, that you're giving the best version of yourself, that you're not completely and absolutely depleted because all day you've been running around giving and minding and working, and you haven't had an opportunity just to decompress and take a moment. And then when you're able to go back, then connecting with people, you're feeling calm and settled for it. So it's important to consider that as well. Then just as far as learning, then so continuing to learn, what does that mean right now? So for some it might be trying something new, or rediscovering, or going back to maybe an old hobby or interest that you once had. I know I certainly for years had fallen away from baking, and now I find myself like a culinary genius every weekend. So it's
I know, too much, isn't it? God, they want to eat it all.
Yeah, I think sales of flour have gone up 50% or something. So it's incredible. A lot of people are returning back to things that maybe before we didn't have time for, or we didn't make time for. It's an opportunity as well, if you are thinking maybe for kind of your own personal or professional growth and development, whether there's courses online that you are interested in and motivated in doing. Because I guess the idea of the keep learning is that by setting challenges for yourself, there is, I suppose, there's a confidence that comes when we're doing something and we're developing a skill, or we're honing a talent and we're using our strengths. In addition, it's a bit of fun. Like we can actually have fun with this, and use it as an opportunity for that. I know for me in particular, I suppose our days right now, they can kind of feel they almost blend. So you're looking for something that maybe makes that day a little bit more unique, or it brings a bit of meaning or a bit of satisfaction, a bit of variety. So I think I suppose those ideas of learning or doing something new, or doing a hobby, are really supportive to our mental health right now. And then I suppose in taking notice, which is the next of the 5 a day, it's about reflecting on our experiences. It's about reflecting on our thoughts and our emotions. How we are reflecting on those experiences then will help us to appreciate what matters to us. And then also, I suppose, when we know how we're feeling and we've checked in with ourselves, we then know how to move forward. We maybe make considered actions, and we take note, and we decide actually in that moment the thing that might be most supportive to me might be a walk, because at the moment I'm feeling very distressed and stressed, and I need maybe a moment to unwind. Taking notice as well is about being curious. It's about catching sight of the beautiful, remarking on the unusual, and noticing things even like the changing seasons, or the grand stretch in the evening. Savouring those moments that we have with people, if we're out for a walk, maybe with the person that we live with, or the unit that we're in at the moment, the meals that we're enjoying with those individuals, and our talks with friends, whether it be virtually, for the moment. Just, I suppose, taking note of the satisfaction that we get from that, or the positivity and engagement that we have. I guess taking notice is that idea of being aware of the world around you and what you are feeling. Taking notice as well is, I suppose, related to gratitude. That's one aspect of it. So at the moment, there might be things in your life that are going well, or that you are thankful for. And there's a lot of evidence to support that actually taking note of those things is very supportive to your mental health as well. So if you can at all, I suppose I'm in the habit of actually writing it in my mobile. I have a gratitude app, and I take a little photo, and I write particular things every day, just that I'm grateful for. So it can be very supportive just in terms of managing your mood and managing your anxiety. And at the end of the year, it's a very nice reflective piece. You almost have a journal on the things that you've done and you've experienced over that year. Meditation and mindfulness is something that you haven't tried. There's a lot of resources online as well insofar as mindfulness and meditation apps. So Headspace and Calm are two very reputable apps if that was something you'd like to consider. And again, engaging in single focused activity as well, whether it's out in the garden or taking a walk outdoors and being totally present and immersed in that as well. That can be in itself mindfulness, taking a mindful moment. So there's opportunities for that even in the midst of what's happening. So finally, the last of the 5-a-day for mental health is being active. So exercise is very important for maintaining our physical and mental health, and we know this. But at the moment, it's about being deliberate about including exercise in our day, because there's a lot that we can achieve with it, insofar as it can help us tick a whole load of other boxes. It can allow for us to take notice and connect with other people if we're maybe taking a walk with the other person in our home, or even if we're out on the still smile. That hasn't been restricted and stopped, so we can smile from people to people when we pass them by. Perhaps now is the time to try some of the YouTube videos or the online resources that are available to people. I think everyone has been recommending Joe Wicks, the body coach. I think he's doing a lot online for PE. So even things like that can be very supportive, and again it can bring a sense of routine and rhythm to the day. That's kind of more organized exercise. You might decide that actually that's not for you, but you might have incidental exercise where you're maybe gardening, you're cleaning the windows, or you're sweeping the driveway. That's all moving your body. So it's about finding something that works for you. There's no pressure to be at this moment running a marathon or training for the likes of it, but it's about just finding your way of being active. And if it's possible to leave your home, you could change your scenery by maybe taking the dog for a run or visiting the park. And if motivation is low, using a stepper, that could maybe get you going. But also looking online, again, there's lots of local sports partnerships, even I suppose Athletics Ireland and the Special Olympics. They're all releasing information and videos and challenges that are there to get communities across Ireland active. So there's a lot of opportunity there to be creative with it. So I hope those 5-a-day for mental health are in some way supportive to you. I most certainly do check in on what I'm doing to support my mental health by using the 5-a-day for mental health. So we'll just move on to, I suppose, the conclusion, I suppose, is mental health matters while we socially distance, or I suppose physically distance, and that will continue to be the case as we move through this journey with COVID-19. It would seem that we will be adapting to this new for another period of time. So it's so important that we continue to monitor our mental health, check in with ourselves and how we're experiencing things, and take proactive steps to mind our mental health. Part of that is actually knowing our early warning signs, which Elaine spoke about. What are the things that you first begin to notice when you're maybe beginning to burn out or feel overwhelmed or stressed? Recognizing also the importance of how we think and maybe how that colours our experience, and remembering our 5-a-day for mental health. That also being hugely important to all of this, and there being a lot of research and evidence to back up each of the 5 things that I spoke through. And then Great. Finally,
just to say through questions as well. We're going to be here for a little while when we finish our presentation, so just to say if there's any questions, just fire them our way. Not guaranteeing we'll have all the right answers, but we'll have a chat about it anyway.
Yeah, certainly. So just, I suppose, finally, finding the right help for you. So if there is maybe a young person in your life that you are maybe particularly concerned about, maybe as their parent, or maybe as a concerned adult, we do have a free phone service that was launched recently, and that's 1-800 Jigsaw, or 1-800-544-729. As well as the additional resources that we have on Jigsaw online, which I'm guessing, because you're using this webinar this evening, you might have already tracked your way through the Jigsaw online site. So do continue to look at that for updates, and also look at the resources that are available for you as a parent in supporting your young person. I also want to flag as well that there's a lot of really valuable information and resources online at the moment as well on www.gov.ie in this together. So do have a look at that. There's a lot of activities and suggestions there on how you continue to support yourself and support others throughout this whole journey of COVID-19. So do have a look on, I suppose, the recommended kind of sites. So again, do view trusted sites, so the HSE and gov.ie and so forth being a good place to get your information from. Okay, so we're I suppose open to taking questions now. If anyone has any anything that maybe we've spoken about and maybe they have a question on, or
yeah, you're on a bit of a roll there, Fiona. So I wonder, there's just a parent who is struggling to concentrate, so working from home, it sounds like, and yeah, they're just finding it hard to kind of I suppose be motivated or to stay focused. It sounds like it might be a busy household. Any tips that you can think of? I'm thinking as well.
Yeah, so I think that's quite a common experience right now, and I think it does relate back, I suppose, Elaine, to what you were talking about earlier. We have so many roles right now. We are trying to work from home and parent from home, and there are, I suppose, obvious distractions and reasons to feel less motivated. Just insofar as I'm guessing this person is potentially maybe at home and it being quite a busy household. So I'm just wondering, I suppose, it might be important to maybe have a conversation with the family as well, just around your work schedule, I think in the first instance. So do people know your hours of work? Do they know maybe that there are particular deadlines that you're working towards? And maybe speaking to them about that as well. Let them know that that there are times when you are available throughout the day, but then there are times where you're not so available, and speak to them about that. It might be as well for, I suppose, just in terms of motivation as well. I know that this is something that I've kind of struggled with in the last little while, but setting, I suppose, setting a timer for, I call it deep thinking, or kind of your deep work. So you set a timer for 25 minutes, you do your deep work, then you take a 5-minute break, and then you set another timer for 25 minutes, and it just allows for kind of focused attention, with knowledge that you have a little bit of a break at kind of the end of that 25 minutes. Again, setting small goals for yourself, like what do I want to achieve today? So you might just set 3 high-level goals and work towards that.
Yeah.
I think,
and I suppose it's about maybe being realistic as well, in terms of these current circumstances. A lot of us are working from home, but then other people have described it as, okay, we're in the midst of a crisis, and we're we've been forced to work from home, or situations. So it's not, I suppose, like in the normal course of working from home. And some things I was thinking, okay, so maybe having a designated space in the house where, where I suppose it's kind of free of distractions, or where there's a little bit more peace, or order, I suppose, and like that, where you kind of have your space to kind of concentrate and you have what you need. I know when I started working from home initially, I had to get a little crate to put everything in, like the notebooks, my laptop, my charger, because there was just bits of me all over the house, and it was just not, it wasn't conducive to getting work done. And then another thing actually that I saw my colleague do recently was he got his children to help. So he invited them into this dilemma that there are times where I really can't be disturbed. So he got them to make a sign that he could put up outside his door, saying, you know, Daddy can be disturbed, basically. So maybe there's something there, you know, that you could get their help with, you know, and then they have a little bit of ownership and they're like, oh yeah, I know what that sign means. Again, it kind of depends on the ages, I guess, of people in the house, but you're doing great. And then I suppose, look, conversation with your own boss or supervisor, whoever is supporting you as well. It might just be good to keep those lines of communication open so that, you know, maybe they feel actually that you're doing a great job in the midst of it all, when it doesn't even feel like it really yourself. But
we just had another question there, Elaine, just from a parent asking about experiencing guilt for feeling stressed when maybe they're viewing other people as being maybe in more difficult or challenging circumstances.
Yeah, it's that's a really tricky one. Yeah, because I do feel like a lot, I suppose, you know, a lot of people obviously are going through so much loss, bereavement, you know, obviously maybe losing jobs. There can, I suppose, everybody's circumstances are so different. But at the same time, your emotions are what they are, and you're entitled to those. And just because other people maybe have different stressors or have, you know, things going on which maybe seem like they're more, let's say, you know, they're more serious, or it doesn't mean that your feelings aren't absolutely valid. At the end of the day, all that we have control over is our own lives and our own emotions. So I would say, yeah, to just again bring that compassion, that gentleness to yourself. You know, that I suppose beating yourself up about that, it's not going to help other people who that you've identified maybe in worse situations, and it's not going to help you. Whereas if you can be a bit more gentle or kinder to yourself, then you'll be in a better position to maybe support others that are going through stuff, and, you know, just to be, I suppose, you know, stronger and feeling better in yourself. I suppose it's very human though, isn't it? Because we're being bombarded as well. I know I've had to kind of tune out, like, and switch off a bit from the media, because it was kind of addictive at the start, you know, the updates, but I just didn't feel like it was serving me well. So maybe that's something, you know, as well, to kind of, I suppose, on the news and things, you know, when there is so much trauma and bad news out there, it might be worth trying to kind of limit that. I don't know, Fiona, if you have any other thoughts, or.
I think I'd agree with that. I suppose it is we're all going through this. It's a very difficult situation. And I think it actually binds us all together. It's that idea of common humanity. We're all going through what is a very uncertain time. We're all experiencing different losses, different griefs. Maybe griefs people know because we speak about them, or griefs that people don't know about us, our experiences in the day-to-day, or how this has impacted us. So it is, in many ways, it says we can never judge a book by the cover, but it most doesn't. I guess that guilt feeling, it doesn't make you feel better. It just makes you feel worse. So it's kind of like prolonging the distress by holding guilt feeling on top of maybe actually I've had a lot of grief, or I've lost something. So it's a whole lot worse. So if you can let go of the guilt and just deal with the grief, you'll probably have a better time of it. So I suppose it's holding those gently. So it is that idea of compassion and kindness towards the self.
And then, Fiona, we have a parent who's said if they would just if we could just recommend one thing that they would do, so we have our 5 a day for mental health, but just in terms of one thing that we would recommend, I think I would be thinking, okay, where's your happy place? Like, what's the thing that, you know, just in terms of keep learning, you know, when you were talking about the baking, like, I think for me, it's like nearly that, okay, what is something that really kind of makes you happy? So if there was a Venn diagram of you doing this thing and feeling stressed, then they'd never overlap, you know, whether it's listening to a podcast or reading your favorite magazine. So for me, it's a really personal thing, but to tune in and think about, okay, what is it that I really love and enjoy, and making a commitment with yourself to be like, okay, every day, maybe from 5:30 until 5:45, that's my 15 minutes, and I'm going to do this thing, and let everybody know this is what's happening and this is the rules. So just, I suppose my one thing would be to carve out a period of time, a short period of time every day where you can do something that is just absolutely enjoyable for you. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's that idea of satisfaction and meaning, and like having time for yourself, because I think our relationships at the moment, they're so valuable to us, and yet there's such opportunity for us to all be kind of clashing as well, because we're living together at home, and we're spending all of our time together now, where maybe we might have had routines that broke that a little bit for us in terms of our work routines, and maybe the people that we socialize with throughout the week as a break from maybe always being at home. So I definitely agree that it is so important to have your own time as well. Even though there is an emphasis on connecting and socializing at a physical distance. I think the 5 a day in its entirety, but also I suppose it's that idea of routine. I guess in terms of what's happening at the moment, having anchors of familiarity in our day. Like if you're just, it's such a sea of uncertainty right now. So if you can have anchors of familiarity, they kind of help to ground us. They kind of help us to feel secure. So if in our day we can have opportunity for connection, for giving, and we have a designated time for doing it. And they don't have to be, again, like big acts of giving, but it can be just sending a text to someone to let them know that you're thinking about them, or arranging a call, or and doing it as part of nearly constructing a new routine for yourself. I think that could be really helpful, having some sense of a rhythm and a flow to your day, with those things built into it. I think it can be really helpful.
Yeah, great. Okay, so hopefully some ideas there that people can take from. I think that's probably nearly it for this evening. I think our technical fairies in the background have just reminded us. I think there's a survey that will probably pop up at the end of the webinar. So if you want to take some time, if you have some time to do that, that would be really great. I suppose we are just trying to kind of respond and put up helpful content during this time. So yeah, just to say thanks a million, I suppose. Fiona, is there anything else that you'd like to?
Just thank you. Thanks for listening, and we wish everyone the best, wish everyone good health, and just to continue to take care of your mental health while social distancing. So
brilliant.
Thank you everyone.
Thanks. Bye. Thanks, Fiona.
Bye. Bye, Lane.